Good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to see everyone here. Hasn't this been already inspiring and really, really moving and pivotal in the time that we're in and prophetic, all of that. And so thank you, Dr. Bueller and all of the ICEJ staff for persevering, for putting this on. We needed to be here now, right? So I have been asked to speak from Esther and relate it to a current issue that's happening. And so I chose to talk about Esther, social justice, and anti-Semitism. The story of Esther teaches a timeless and universal issue of justice, that humans have the right and the responsibility to defend themselves against those who intend to murder. The right to self-defense was relevant in Esther's time. It's just as relevant today. Right now, as we meet, Israel is still involved in an unresolved and an existential battle with a radical Islamic regime that for 47 years has been focused on one thing: the destruction of the Jewish state. Esther's lesson on justice is taught in the context of an attempted genocide of the Jews of ancient Persia, instituted by a man named Haman, identified in the text as the enemy of the Jews. In response to Haman's plan to annihilate them, the Jewish people were allowed to defend themselves against all who sought to kill them. It's not a coincidence that the regime in control of modern Persia, otherwise known as Iran, seeks nuclear weapons to destroy the Jewish state. There's a spiritual connection between those in ancient Persia who sought to kill the Jewish people and those in modern Persia who seek to destroy the Jewish state. In Daniel 10, 1 through 14, Daniel was visited by a man clothed in white who spoke to him about things he'd been trying to understand. And the man told Daniel that he'd been trying to get to him for 3 weeks. What was the problem? The prince of the kingdom of Persia opposed him. Finally, Michael the archangel was necessary to come and help this man in white get to Daniel. Well, this account reveals there's a spiritual battle over the kingdom of Persia, and it's led by the prince of the kingdom of Persia. Principalities don't die. So I suggest the same spiritual battle is going on today. And in Daniel 10:14, the man in white told Daniel he came to help him understand what is to happen to his people, who were Daniel's people, the Jews, in the end of days. So from this text, we understand that the spiritual battle over Persia is all about the Jewish people. And it's related to what will happen to the Jews in the end of days. Needless to say, we live in prophetic times. And this is what makes everything happening right now in Iran so critical, and why it's so critical that we're all here now, this week. It's also what's happening right now is also what makes the timeless issue of justice taught in the book of Esther just as relevant today as it was in Esther's time. Just as the Jewish people had the right to defend themselves against Persians who came to kill them 2,500 years ago, so too the Jewish state has the right to defend itself today against the declared genocidal intent of this Islamic regime. They do not make any secret about the fact that they intend to wipe out Israel. Well, one of the most popular causes of our time is that of social justice. And it's promoted with the fervor of a false theology, which in fact it is. Social justice truly has become a religion for most, if not all of its proponents. Advocates of social justice claim to be working for justice for all. However, that's not the case when it comes to Jews or the state of Israel. Rather, the theology of social justice turned real justice upside down through its blatant hostility to Jews and the Jewish state. And in so doing, social justice warriors encourage and enable this alarming rise in anti-Semitism, which manifests as a violent hatred of the Jewish people wherever they are. Every Jew in the world is associated with Israel, and every Jew in the world is vulnerable to attack. So in order to better understand the error behind the theology of social justice, let's look at what true justice really is. I'm going to read a definition of justice from Webster's 1913 dictionary. One point is the quality of being just, conformity to the principles of righteousness in the dealings of men with each other. 2, conformity to truth and reality in expressing opinions and in conduct. Fair representation of facts, honesty, and impartiality. The rendering to everyone his due or right just treatment or even-handed justice. Well, I chose this 100-year-old definition on purpose so we can see just how much the definition of justice has been completely inverted and corrupted in these past 100 years. The advocates of social justice do not conform to the principles of righteousness in all things. They do not conform to human or divine law. They do not practice integrity or conformity to truth. They make up a narrative to suit their purpose. Now let's look at the definition of justice from Scripture. And as I read these texts, it'll be obvious how they expose the error of social justice belief and practice. First of all, God is just. Deuteronomy 32:4 says, "The rock, his work is perfect, for all his ways are justice. He's a God of faithfulness and without iniquity. Just and upright is he." Psalm 33:5 says, "He loves justice, righteousness, and the earth is full of the steadfast love of the Lord." As we walk with God, we are also to follow justice. Deuteronomy 16:20 says, "Justice and only justice you shall follow, that you may live and inherit the land that the Lord your God is giving you." And Proverbs 21:3 says, "To do justice and righteousness is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice." Psalm 106:3 says, "Blessed are they who observe justice, who do righteousness at all times." Well, Scripture also talks about justice and evil people. It's very clear. And these scriptures I'm giving you are just a small sampling. There's many more. Proverbs 21:15 says, "When justice is done, it's a joy to the righteous, but terror to evildoers." And Proverbs 24:24-25 says, "Whoever says to the wicked, 'You are in the right,' will be cursed by people and abhorred by nations. But those who rebuke the wicked will have delight." The scriptures also talk about the perversion of justice. And Exodus 23, it says, "You shall not spread a false report." Proverbs 6:16-19 describes 7 perversions of justice. And the last of those is one who sows discord among brothers. And we are seeing that more and more in this culture in which we live, no matter what country we're from. So now I want to look at the definition of justice from Esther and its relation to current events, especially Israel's ongoing conflict with Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and this radical regime that has taken over Iran. In chapter 3 of Esther, Haman falsely accused the Jews in order to get permission from the king to authorize a genocide. I know we all know the story. And the king gave Haman permission. So Esther 3:13 gives us the content of that decree. And it says, "Letters were sent by the hand of the runners to all the provinces of the king to exterminate, to kill, and to destroy all the Jews, from young to old, children and women in one day." Those 3 verbs, exterminate, to kill, and to destroy, are then used in the counter decree. So keep those 3 words in mind. And also note that they had to really emphasize this killing of the Jews. It wasn't enough to just say kill. They're going to kill, exterminate, and destroy. Well, after Esther learned about the decree, she asked the king to reverse Haman's decree. And the king said it's not possible, and that's true. Under ancient Persian law, it was not possible to reverse, to change a decree once it had been issued in the king's name. But the king said, you can write a new decree. So in Esther 8:11, we read the content of that counter decree. And it says, the king allowed the Jews who were in every city to assemble and stand for their lives, to exterminate and to kill and to destroy all the army of the people or province, their adversaries, children and women. So the same three verbs, to exterminate and to kill and destroy, are used in the exact same form as in the first decree. But this verse in chapter 8 begins with the king allowed the Jews to assemble and to stand. Those verbs in the Hebrew make it very clear this is only a position of self-defense. In that defensive position, then, they could kill, exterminate, and destroy anyone who came against them, but they couldn't take the initiative. They were only allowed to do to their enemies what their enemies intended to do to them. So this means if the enemies of the Jews had not tried to kill them, the Jews would have had no cause to kill anyone, and nobody would have died. So let's apply this to Israel's situation today. The truth is, Israel wants to live in peace and has not initiated any of the wars it's been forced to fight. Every war, beginning with the War of Independence in 1948, has been fought in response to Arab armies attacking the Jewish state for the purpose of wiping it off the map. In other words, all of Israel's wars have been defensive wars. Even when it looks like they're taking an offensive action, it is preemptive because they're taking out the source of danger to them. The current conflicts Israel is involved in with Hamas, with Hezbollah, and Iran are defensive wars. So therefore, the timeless and universal issue of justice taught through the story of Esther, that humans have the right and the responsibility to defend themselves against those who intend to murder, is relevant today. A defensive war is just one example of a broader concept known as just wars. The question about what is a just war, or is any war just, has been discussed for centuries in the church, and the debate continues to this day. This is a partial definition of a just war. There must be a serious prospect of success. The war must not produce a greater evil than the evil that they're trying to destroy, and the damage inflicted must be lasting. In other words, there must be a decisive victory. I don't have time to go into what that means now, but here are three examples of a just war. Defensive, such as what was fought in Esther. A war that protects innocence. That's a just war. That's what Israel is fighting now. Israeli citizens are targeted by terrorists, and the state of Israel is protecting its citizens. And then there's a preventive war, such as the one that's fought to prevent Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran from being able to destroy Israel. A preventive war is initiated in the belief that to delay that war it would allow for what was going to happen later to be even worse. And that's the principle Israel is operating under now as it takes out Hamas's ability, Hezbollah's ability, and the Iranian regime's ability to fire missiles, rockets, and develop a nuclear bomb. The truth is, Israel is fighting wars on multiple fronts that are defensive, that protect innocent lives, and prevent a greater danger if the war was put off. Therefore, Israel's wars are just, and they're based on the timeless issue of justice, that humans have the right and the responsibility to defend themselves against those who intend to murder. Well, in addition to this important principle, Esther teaches us the necessity of taking action against evil, no matter what the cost. At first, Esther hesitated to take action on behalf of her people because she could be killed if she went to the king uninvited. Mordecai was telling her to use her position and help her people, and Esther said, but you can't go to the king if you're not invited. Well, in response to that, Mordecai said she wasn't going to be any safer than any other Jew if she didn't take action. So in response to Mordecai's challenge to use her position to save her people, Esther said she would go to the king, and she ended her statement with what? She said, and if I die, I die. Just like Esther and the Jews of Persia, we are living in perilous times. All of us are actually under threat as we stand with Israel and the Jewish people. But just like Esther, we have been placed in whatever position we've been placed in for such a time as this. In the face of rising Jew hatred and opposition to Israel, we must do whatever we can, wherever we can, however we can do it, in spite of opposition and possible danger. It's a false hope to think that if we keep quiet in the face of rising evil, that we'll somehow be safe. It doesn't work that way. All it takes for evil to win is for good people to do nothing. So in these times in which we live, I exhort all of us to do everything we can to speak up, stand up, and take action whenever and wherever hatred of the Jews and the state of Israel shows its dangerous head. Thank you.